Greetings, hello. Welcome to the Red Hen Press Poetry Hour, brought to you by the Broad Stage at Home. I'm your host, Sandra Tsing Loh, and this is standing in for the Broad Stage in Santa Monica, my messy, darkly lit living room in Pasadena. And because we are streaming to you live on Facebook, we do want to hear from you live in the comment section. We picture you two at home in your living rooms or bedrooms, sipping your very dry kava, baking your naan. We've had a lot of nocturnal baking on the show. So please share with us what you're ingesting and also your thoughts on the poets and poetry that you're hearing this evening, particularly if you have questions for our featured poet who will be appearing at the beginning of the show and at the end of the hour. We'll get to her in a moment. But first, if we could please virtually welcome co-founder and managing editor of the Red Hen Press, Ms. Kate Gale. Hello, Kate.
Hey, good to see you, Sandra.
Oh, look at you looking very summery today.
Yes.
Okay. And let us welcome also artistic and executive director of the Broad Stage, Maestro Rob Bayless.
Hi, how are you?
Oh my goodness, look at that shirt. Very painterly today.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I'm joining Kate in the summery look.
Yes, so summery you both. So thoughts, 6 weeks that we've done this. It seems we've been on such a journey. What are your thoughts, Kate? And it was your birthday last week, and we got a lot of tourist shots.
Yeah, so that was fun. I'm kind of amazed at how many people who have come in to watch this show who are maybe not traditional poetry readers. I think Donald Petrie, who is the film director who did the Miss Congeniality movies, has been watching this. Gail Ann Hurd, who is the producer of The Walking Dead, has been watching this. So a lot of folks who are maybe not, quote, poetry types have been watching this. Vanity Fair, I just sent Rob this today. On the cover of Vanity Fair, it said, "This is the time for poetry." And I think part of it is shows like this that have really started to really bring poetry into all of our lives right now. And so it's very exciting to me to see how poetry is really having a moment during this time. And I think part of it is that there's something about this slow time that we're in that has given poetry a moment. And so it's been really exciting to me how much good feedback we've gotten about this show. At Red Hen, we've gotten so many emails and messages from people thanking us for this show and telling us how exciting they found watching it. So it's been great.
Rob?
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you 100%, and I love that you sent that to me. It's amazing those moments when even pop culture goes right to the truth of poetry and says, this is what we all need. And I was really grateful for, first of all, that you thought to send it to me, but also that's really where we are. We're in this place where the incredibly, insightful, sharp tools of poetry that help all of us navigate and just, traverse our lives with greater depth. I mean, here it is. Here's the ultimate tool and the ultimate pathway. And we have these incredible people around us to share with us each week. And it's really been a pleasure across the board. Every one of these has been just terrific thus far. And I'm super excited to see Camille. I was reading a bunch of her work this week, as you know I do before people come on the show. And it was ironic tonight that I had read a bunch of her poetry, which is especially her stuff about being a mother and about her daughter, which are just incredible pieces of writing. And I just happened to turn the corner on my afternoon walk, as you know I take each afternoon with my dog. And there was this enormous bouquet of pink balloons and a giant sign that said, "It's a girl." And I just thought, what a gift to think about new life. What a gift right now to think about new life and to share that moment, especially with this poet tonight. So I'm ready to go. I'm super excited.
So great. Well, to new life, to spring. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Rob. And with that, we turn to our featured poet this evening, Camille T. Dungy. Her debut collection of personal essays is Guidebook to Relative Strangers, W. Norton. She's also the author of 4 collections of poetry, Trophic Cascade, Smith Blue, and on Red Hand Press, Sock on the Marrow, and What to Eat, What to Drink, What to Leave for Poison. Dungy has edited Black Nature, 4 centuries of African American nature poetry, and co-edited, you'll love this title, From the Fish House, an anthology of poems that sing, rhyme, resound, syncopate, alliterate, and just plain sound great. A poet would say that better than me, but you get the idea. Her poems and essays have appeared in Best American Poetry, Best American Travel Writing, 100 Best African American Poems, and nearly 30 other anthologies. Her numerous awards include a Guggenheim Fellowship, several NEA Fellowships, an American Book Award. She's been a finalist for the William Carlos Williams Award, the Penn Center USA Literary Award for Poetry, National Book Critics Circle Award, so many others. So Dungy is currently a professor in English at Colorado State University, living in Fort Collins, Colorado with her husband and 9-year-old daughter, I believe. And she has been going to bed really early. So this is kind of a late night for her. This is exciting. So Camille, hello, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. So we're going to hang on because you're going to stay up. It's a late night.
Okay, I'm going to do it. I can do it. I can do it.
So speaking of which, I know you're up early writing in this time in quarantine. So what has your life been like as a poet and as a person in this surreal time?
It's been a series of adjustments. It feels, my husband and I say it feels somewhat like those early months of being a new parent when everything just changed overnight and we had to readjust and panic would just ensue out of nowhere, and then you would kind of calm back into a pattern, and just when you got a new pattern it would have to change. And so in that sense we were experienced in that kind of sudden shifting and changing, but it's always a new thing. And I'm a professor, but being an elementary school teacher is not the same thing. And so learning how to homeschool my child. And I have to say that one of the beautiful things is this opportunity to spend time as a family together. We like each other. And so we're lucky in that sense, right? Like not everybody has that blessing, but we do. And and so we get to spend this time together, and that's what I keep trying to do, is reframe my experience of this time in a state of gratitude, to think about the ways that we can spend time together, the ways that we can learn new modes of survival as a family.
And how has your daughter responded to this time?
Every human in this house is an extrovert. And so this is a difficult thing, right? I mean, being an extrovert doesn't necessarily mean hanging out with the same other 2 people all the time. We've been home since March 12th is the day that we came home, and basically have been here since. And so that's difficult. And my daughter's an athlete, she's a dancer. And so that kind of physical motion of getting around and about is a little hard to do inside a house. So we figured out all new kinds of ways of like confinement exercise. I may be building up my core strength in really fantastic ways, because I've learned how to do leg presses with an 80-pound weight, being my child. And so I'm trying to figure out those things. And as you mentioned, I wake up really early. They're night people, and so they can stay up fairly late. And if I can get to bed by about 10 o'clock, I can wake up by 5:30 and 6 and get a good couple hours of writing done before the day gets started. And then I have no more time of alone time after that.
And so you mentioned the word confinement. And so confinement is definitely a theme in your poetry. I wonder if you might read us a poem or two sort of on this theme.
I'd be happy to do that. I think one of the things when I talk about thinking about how to reframe this time and not make it just all about me, and not make it all just about the awfulness of this particular moment. I tend to think within historical context, and I understand that I, in this moment and in the larger view of history, am actually quite quite lucky, in a sense, to be able to have this time at home with my family in a place of comfort and security that many, many people right now don't have, and that certainly many people who have looked like me in the past as women, as Black people, haven't. One of the things that I'm doing with my daughter right now is working on her school project, and she has chosen as her historical hero Harriet Tubman. And so we've been doing a lot of research on the 19th century. Today we spent several hours reading a book called Never Caught about Ona Judge, who is an enslaved member of the George and Martha Washington's household, who self-emancipated and never was taken back. And so I'm thinking about that kind of confinement, that kind of a lack of freedom, and that doesn't match in any way the experience that we're having. But in my second book, Stuck on the Marrow, I write about a woman, an imagined woman who's imagined out of the realities of history, who has a level of confinement that does not equal anything like what we are dealing with now. Dinah in the box. Dinah spent 20 hours with her face by the breathing hole, her body curled like a nursing child, wondering what order of thanks she would offer the man who opened her crate. She had a particular trick that worked on Jennings when she needed him to understand she meant to please. But Dinah wouldn't be a bachelor's wench in Philadelphia. What angle would her legs take that first night in Philadelphia in relation to the woman's spot between them? Not this infant's pose she was confined to now, not any of the poses favored by Jennings. What would her hands do, free to touch only what they chose? She had 20 hours to remember every way she'd folded to get into this box. She tipped out extra brandy until Jennings railed against the things he hated: taxes, drought, and abolitionists. Turned out old Harrison, the carpenter, was suspected to be one. She tracked Harrison and asked what price and means he'd name. Those two tasks proved more simple than storing up the coins that slipped from Jennings' pocket to the rug beside the bed. It took Dinah 7 months to collect enough to buy the box and pay Harrison for the bill of lading. Dinah touched her knees, tracing the hinge inside them that would straighten in some white man's parlor. She wasn't free yet, but soon. A man she would make herself trust would prise open the lid of her crate.
Such an extraordinary poem, and the sort of the, I don't know, themes of control are in there. It's like she really makes her own narrative. It's really, there's so many things going on there, the way that you write that and handle that. Can you speak to that of how you I mean, your book, Guidebook to Relative Strangers, is journeys into race, motherhood, and history, and it's about being an artist. So it seems you're doing a lot of things at many levels in this. You're telling the story, you're making the story. Can you speak to that? How you?
I think anytime we deal with changes, crises, beauty, anything in our experience, it becomes more interesting to me when I can do it on a variety of levels. And that's one of the beauties of what poetry can offer us, right? Poetry, we can tackle history, we can tackle current events, we can look at the environment around us, we can think about nuance and the straightforward news, both of those all at once. And so the beauty of thinking about what my own own experience of the sense of confinement within my house for now going on 2 months, how that might compare with other significantly more intense confinements, helps me to think about where I am now and place it in a context of relativity that seems important and valuable.
And I think you've said that's a confinement poem, and now you have what you call an anti-confinement poem.
Well, maybe it's a poem called Ars Poetica Apocalyptica. We're out in the open world now. The boy walks to the near edge of the purple horizon, past the last of the strip malls, past the dancing rebels, the food trucks, the penny saver girl. Keys bell his belt loops and pockets. Keys jangle his necklace, castanets in his small, calloused hands. The boy walks with me toward bubble roof aluminum trailers in a horizon the color of plums. Keys sprout from the dirt at our feet the way it used to be with clover. I don't understand all the keys, so I ask. The boy squats to collect what the dirt has offered. Who can know what they will open? The keys have flimsy rings and illegible labels. They all look the same, though some of them are different. This looks like the key to my mother's car. A church key? The office? The boy collects keys from the shady earth the way we used to collect chanterelles. This might be the key to my office. At the near edge of the belligerent horizon, the boy turns a key over twice before he slips it in his pocket. Then he tosses a ring in the air the way we once tossed tangerines.
Love that. And I think the sort of equating keys with chanterelles, I mean, it sort of reminds me that nature, that African-American poetry dealing with nature in a way that white poets maybe always hadn't. And I think that strikes me. That can you speak to that for a moment, of nature?
I mean, I think that African-American, the African-American nature poetry is in many ways very different because the African-American experience with connection with the environment in this country, the history that's connected with that is different. And in some ways it's not different at all because we all are here in the same environment. One tip that I may say with that poem is perhaps with all these crazy COVID dreams that you're having, you could write a poem because that is a poem that really came to me out of a dream, right? So that experience of like the weirdness of this time that feels apocalyptic, that feels like we don't know what to do with confinement. Maybe we can make something imaginative and wonderful about that. And perhaps that speaks to part of what you're saying with the African-American experience. Out of hard times, we very frequently figured out how to make some kinds of beauty and new possibilities in art.
Speaking of the apocalypse, one final poem before we break.
One final poem before we break. Mother-daughter hour. Callie is reading the book about language, and I am reading the book about death. Ball, she says, pointing to an orange. I shake my head. I read, death is the mother of beauty. She says, pretty ball. I am going to have to put down my book so I can teach her better. But first, I read her one last sentence because I am struck by all its vowel sounds. That, finally, is all it means to be alive, to be able to die. She is listening, and she is not listening. The afternoon light is brighter here on the couch than any other place in the room. With her little thumb and baby finger, my daughter turns her board book's pages. Red, she says, pointing to an apple. Red, I say, and we sit together a while longer, read some more.
Thank you, Camille T. Dungy. If you're just joining us, this is the Red Hen Press Poetry Hour brought to you by the Broad Stage at Home. I'm your host, Sandra Tsing Loh, and Camille will be back in about 20 minutes to answer questions and share with us. And hi, Donald Petrie, who is wishing Kate happy birthday. Charles Harper Webb, you're back. Harlan Rotblatt, that's so delightful that you say my living room is dark, but I'm so incandescent. So we are now going to turn to some poets, some on video and some live, before we return to Camille. And first up, we're going to have on video, Adrianne Kalfopoulou.
Hi, Red Hen. Hi from Athens, Greece. And thanks to the Broad Stage for inviting and also curating these readings. So I'm going to read a poem, maybe two poems that have come out of this time that we've been living all together and also very separately. So this came out of a sort of notes that I've made in my journal. One, I dream of doing my hair, swallowing warm bourbon, dancing tango, the sounds of Francisco Canaro leading me in my Cavaliero. Do you want to die? The Italian mayor is yelling, breaking the reverie of someone like me dreaming, his arms open to sky to say, I imagine, this is life. But he's supposed to be inside in Lombardy, the wind batting his hair and the mayor shaking his head. Lombardy, now the epicenter of the sickness sweeping Europe. In another dream, Carlos is dancing as water slowly rises around him. He keeps posting online lessons, and today's surprise is his dama, a hanger he introduces from his closet. Held gingerly at the shoulders. This way, he says, smiling into the camera. It's how to hold your dama. Moving with her, he glides to a milonga playing on a vinyl, a curtain's filtered light swimming across the walls and floor of a bedroom. 2. My daughter can't sleep. My daughter wants to know if I called out her name when I am sure I must have been dreaming the name of a lover. Awake late, she is making origami cranes. The birds, good luck, she explains, creasing their paper wings to suggest flight. How like the hands of the sight-challenged poet who has lost the world once again, unable to touch its shapes. Instructed like everyone to mind what can settle on the flesh. She is telling me how it feels to find new ways to be. And so in my dreams, I see how hungry the cats are in the streets, trade food for wine, a packet of cigarettes dropped from a guardrail, perfectly etched on the surface of a river, each scattered cigarette intact. Dolphins are everywhere. Wisteria hangs from balconies. A man stands in the middle of an empty street every day, lingering there in the sun, as if he could do this forever. Now I'll read one more poem. And this is very recent, sort of toward the end of this lockdown in Athens. I cannot do what I used to do, but I shake out the small rug in front of the sink, the small rug in front of the fridge, the small rug in front of the stove, 3 small rugs. And as I shake them out over the balcony, I notice the rose bush with buds. I notice the bud is starting to bud. I notice the tree below the balcony has lemon blossoms. I notice that the cats have scattered the sand from the litter box. I sweep up the scattered grains of sand. I sweep up the dust. Sometimes the leaves on the balcony. I water the potted olive tree given to me when I was in love with someone who was in love with me, who then left. And the tree almost died. A small, very small olive still hangs on the tree from that time. I keep watching it, happy it is still there, holding on from that time. I had left for several weeks, and the tree's olives all dried up. I had the energy then to buy a new pot, dirt, gave the roots room and watered the tree so it wouldn't die, and it didn't, and that olive still hangs as new leaves sprout, as the seasons change, and I sometimes forget to water the plants, but now I do, one of the things I still do. In days when what we do inside our homes feels immense, the smaller, the more mundane, like watering the plants, the more immense. Because we can still do these things as the world outside has grown overwhelming. The doctors, too, every day doing what they can. It is immense. Thank you. Be well.
Thank you. That was Adrianne Kalfopoulou. And joining us, we have Cheryl Dumesnil. Apologies if I butcher your names. Bianca Richards and Ron Kirchi are with us. Diana Vagianas Armentrout is shouting out to Anthea Karanassos. And if you're just joining us, it's the Red Hen Press Poetry Hour brought to you by the Broad Stage at Home. I'm Sandra Tsing Loh. Next, live, we have Tess Taylor.
Hi, everyone. Happy Saturday. I wanted to read a poem for the parents. My children actually have a tent in the backyard, and after this, we're going to go try to sleep in the tent because we're doing everything we can, and sometimes more than we thought we could. But I wanted to read a poem from before this time about finding a new way to be with your kids. Song with Wild Plum and Thorn. The morning is cold and the world is hard, but even in fog, it is still midsummer. The kids need to play and the grocery budget ticks towards nothing, the way the world tips towards doomsday. The walls in my chest will not let me breathe, and all the screens flicker and still answer nothing. So I take the children down to the bike path with buckets and a few blessed hours wander a corridor of weedy fruit. Blackberry, wild plum, all overhung. We, leaners or gleaners, half acrobatic, lost among boughs, alone till I notice others stopping with buckets and tiffins in many languages along these tracks, picking what weeds we still hold in common as dry heat builds and fog thins. In common, the thought feels strangely radical, crumb or bloom beyond loneliness. For a while, I feel entirely animal, little forager, hungry for fruit. Black sparkle, pale pit and thorn, weeds binding some world together. A word appears in my mind. Hold fast, sprout, raw volunteer. For a while, it is hand to mouth and to bucket, breathing. Still here, still here. I want to read two quick poems. One is for the catastrophes that were happening before this catastrophe and the fault lines that we were standing on before this earthquake. Punctuations and wind. Then once again, someone is shot at a school by a sniper, by police in a movie theater, and the many homeless are hustled and hunted. You read how your clothes are sewn by slaves, your dinner fished by slaves, your fruit picked by starving children. Mostly you don't get away. Mostly you raise the children you have, afraid of no health care, of losing the one goodish job you finally got. Mostly you keep your nose to the grindstone. Your heart flails, a thick fish in your throat. You have felt for a long time that someone is watching. The administration is eroding your benefits. But you are lucky, so you try to feel lucky. By the numbers, you have always lived in an apartheid state. You look at your child, Read reports of the tear gas, text a friend, cry at night. Some days you march when people are marching, some batter windows, some are hit, things are canceled. The year has been dry, even small rain will lead to mudslides. Some nights you wake only to feel yourself for a few minutes grieving or praying or hearing in darkness the old tree tossing and wild, the storm coming. And this last poem is for Olima, epicenter of the earthquake, the 1906 earthquake. February, buckeye unscissor new leaves, cows pasture, buffleheads paddle, a kestrel perches on a bishop pine. Now, just above us, the mountain's humped spine pushes north to Alaska. Extinct invertebrates ride sea cliffs through time. Even these stones have lost cousins in Mexico. Even this freshet is landmass torn open. Even these rocks are reft from each other. Each shelf pushes onward, a restless swimmer looking for land, though nothing is still. Gray whales swim through ocean explosions along continents forged of cracked dispossession. Sunset today. The ridges grow luminous, sharp air, dark spice, horses exhaling. They stomp on the cold, steaming, visible earth. We heat the stove. The children are napping. The cabin's a raft on which we are floating. Below us, the crust is molten, is nationless. We only light our lamps on the rift. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. So wonderful. Next up, Joe Jiménez.
Hi, my name is Joe Jiménez, and I'll be reading to you today from my backyard in San Antonio, Texas. I'll be reading two poems from Rattlesnake Allegory. This is a collection about Texas. It's a poem about owls and rattlesnakes and queerness and being Mexican. The first poem I'm going to read is about cariño, which means affection. Some nights I just want to hold a man in my arms because this would make everything better in my life. The comfort I frame, biceps and all of my Mexican tattoos, my bulldog chest and stuttering lung, whispers that come only from another man's scalp when the whole world inside him is a fingernail or quiet like a small bucket of snails. Even when I'm a remolino, more so than especially, I wish my kiss tenderness, enough to make a man's heart burst into 1,000 desert owls, wing beat, featherness, beak prod, and screech. Last week, I was a pendulum in a fantasy, versatile, swinging back, forth, into deeply. Being entered is when I know I am human. Being entered is when I know I am part of something bigger. Again, equilibrium, evenness. And here it is. I've come here to love breath in my bones when skin falls off the world. And who doesn't carry some sort of trap on his knuckles, the moment inside the body when joy is not born as much as it is made out of anything the rest of the world doesn't want? The second poem I'm going to read, it's about birds and beards. Whistling, or my beard is a feather into his mouth. All day I can pretend I am not lonely. All day I can fathom a catalog of gadgets and twine, money for milk, crumbs left by plum wine and flint. All day I can hope for a hoopla I don't really want. I don't want much really. Good air today, ants maybe, to watch, to carry away shit I don't really acutely need, to consume it. A pile of dirt, maybe, which was bones a century ago, maybe a few blackbirds and parts of a few trees, long twigs, seed pods, root balls and fronds so I can grow. A mouthful of feather, of course, after, like anything else, it has passed through the body and changed. Yes, I still wonder if one day I will fly. I want to say it is simple, like holding a man's hand, like placing my body inside his, but I wouldn't call it that, or placing myself inside one of his shadows behind the myth of his eyes, near the arc root of all gratitude, what he loves and thanks God for and is satisfied with. Yes, wishes. Yeah, horses. Because nothing is simple. Because nothing really holds itself still unless it is always, which is the swell inside the ear bone of the back that whistles every time we return to places we loved. Well, I miss my old life. I miss it. Sometimes I stand by my door, holding my mouth in my hand, wishing for someone to come by. But it is not so simple as missing a man I lost, or pressing my beard into his mouth. See how I've changed? Look at my back now, my arms feathered, my eyes. All of life is like this. Two skins or three, grazing, pressure, friction, horizon, lit and unlit, and lit again. Thank you very much. The book is Rattlesnake Allegory, and I am Joe Jiménez from San Antonio, Texas.
Thank you, Joe. If you're just joining us, this is the Red Hen Poetry Press Hour, Red Hen Press Poetry Hour, brought to you by the Broad Stage at Home. I'm your host, Sandra Tsing Loh, and Maddie Lane Glasgow is with us tonight saying gorgeous. Lisa Cohn is watching from Long Beach, and as always, we welcome your comments in the comments section of our Facebook live streaming. And our featured poet, Camille T. Dungy, will be back shortly to return. Next, we have live poet Elizabeth Bradfield.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to hear these poems and to see all of the ways that poets and lovers of poetry are coming together from far afield. I wanted to read a couple of poems tonight. I've been thinking a lot, of course, as everyone has, about our current situation and where there are other resonances in the world and with things that I've been interested in as a poet as well. And I've been working on poems about an Arctic explorer, Donald B. McMillan. He was born in Provincetown on Cape Cod in 1874, and he died in 1970 in Provincetown and spent his life going up to the Arctic, to the shores of Baffin Island, to Greenland, to other areas as well. And I was struck in reading about him by one moment that he talked about in which a bag of mail was delivered to his ship off of Greenland, and germs came with the mail. So these Arctic explorers, remote from home, hungry for news of home, all got sick. And I was just thinking about that transmission and permeability. So these are two poems about that moment, one looking at McMillan and the other, I'll talk about it in a second. So this is a poem called Traffic. McMillan brings back specimens and examples of the daily stuff native, garb and tools. Home, he shuns gumboots, walks the winter shore in hammocks. He thinks dentistry and church were good introductions, has doubts about the rifle. Summers in camp, some boat brings up a bag of mail. The war, daughters affianced, other explorers pouring out. Within the week, every man is hacking, snuffling above the page. Germs, he finds, are hardy. Sunk Basque whaleboats, a Viking carpenter's plane. He thrills to these discoveries, and this is his archaeology, Europe singed. But the North's true reach is west. Nouns pulled from Beringia's high steps, paddled along the Beaufort shore. He brought North cinema, phonograph. Beside Macmillan's machine, Alnaya did her best for the wax cylinder. He wasn't sure a woman's voice could fix itself there. Still, she sang. He brought that too. And in this manuscript of poems, I've been thinking a lot about the ways we engage with history, the retelling and the thinky part, and then the kind of drifty, wandering, poetic part. So this is what I consider a mirror poem, a poem that springs from the same curiosity, but speaks with a more interior voice. And the title is a little long. Regarding the absent heat of your skin on letters I receive while at sea. And I guess I'll just say one definition here. I talk about a lateral line, the olfactory lobe. The lateral line on fishes is a line along the flanks of their bodies that's incredibly sensitive and important to their sensing of the world. Regarding the absent heat of your skin on letters I receive while at sea. Paper wing, words smudged in your hand's stroke, what has been sealed, torn mouth, lung must, and a shiver along my lateral line, olfactory lobe lit up, breath on the paper, wind on the water and off it, breath from the water and ill wind, tear salt. Fish near the surface, glinting, plankton rising, forced, scent of panic, lung must. Petrels arrive because of, patter and feed. Your eyes on the horizon are greedy, could eat leagues. Call my name, breeze, wind, gale. Let the air clock around your mouth. It pushes unturned against your mouth. If you stand on the shore and call, I'll know. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you to Elizabeth Bradfield for that incredibly so interesting, deep, and resonant poetry at this particular time. This is the Red Hen Press Poetry Hour, brought to you by the Broad Stage at Home. And Sonia Snyder is watching from WV, West Virginia. You can guess with us in the comments. And our featured poet, Camille T. Dungy, will be with us in a moment. But first, let's go live to Kim Stafford.
Hello, I'm here in Oregon at home, and I want to read two short poems. I just finished this week being 2 years the Poet Laureate of Oregon, and I had to cancel my last 25 events. So I've been putting a daily pandemic poem on Instagram, and these are two. This first one, Inmate Calls Home. It came from a conversation with a friend. He said he was talking to a friend in prison, and his friend in prison said, I'm worried about you. We're used to lockdown. For you, I don't know how you're going to be. I'm worried about you. So inmate calls home. Mom, I've been all night worried. This virus thing, they say it gets everywhere. So don't go out, okay? Get food, sit tight, read, just read. You like that. Make calls. Not great, I know. You love those friends. Nights, I hear you tell them things in my mind. Mom, I've been worried. Cabin fever, yeah. On the inside, we're used to that. Lots of practice. Time just turns like a silly dancer. You watch it. But Mom, what you gonna do with all that time? No visits, no go where you want, no bench in that park you like. Nights, Mom, no worry, okay? Me, I'm good. I'm so good. And this next pandemic poem is for a daughter in quarantine. It's all so like a dream in my mind. When I drive the empty streets to find you across the river, east, then north, all the trees in wild blossom. In my mind, I descend the steps to your basement den with food, drink, music. We sit together, your stories and mine. I'm old. may catch it, be gone, or you, or both of us. It was always possible, but now we live in acceleration of the possible. I always wanted your independence, and now we have it. I here writing this, and you there, in danger, brave. Child, girl, woman, it's okay. From far, we live this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim Stafford, poetry. And now I'd like to bring back Camille T. Dungy, our featured poet. Hello.
I'm back.
You're still awake, night owl.
I am, because it's so wonderful to hear people synthesize all of these really important ideas into language that sings.
Yeah, and in so many different ways, and so it's reflected back in so many different like styles and themes. So what do you think about like poetry now, poetry going ahead? I mean, you weave together so much in history and legacy and race and space, and how are you feeling as we're going forward with poetry and your own poetry?
Well, I mean, I think that for those of us who are writers, who are poets, this urgency to figure out a way to digest and speak the world as we see it isn't any different. There have been crises after crises after crises, and joys after joys after joys that poets have figured out how to communicate, right? All the poets here tonight have spoken of the now and a past and a future, and that's what we do. I'm gratified that this is a moment that people can slow down, that people are hungry and thirsty for what it is that poetry can offer. And I'm just happy to say that we've been here for you as poets, and we will remain here for you as poets to help to give the sustenance that's necessary.
And there's so many people joining from all different states, you know, Oregon,
all over the
West
world,
Virginia,
we had Greece.
All over the world, we had Greece. So we're kind of an interesting virtual community this evening. But of course, your book of essays, Guidebook to Relative Strangers. Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that phrase, relative strangers?
Absolutely, I can. I mean, part of the phrase is, you know, this person is a stranger to me. It talks about, and then all of a sudden we've had this intimacy, we have this kind of closeness and connection, and yet at the same time the people who are relatives of ours, who are kin, often sometimes turn out to be strangers that we don't know them. And the beauty of kind of finding where we meet between that, people who seem like we will have nothing in common with whom we have a great deal in common, and people who we can assume we have a great deal in common that we actually learn are strangers to us. That's the space of beauty to me as a writer, to learn what we can learn and what the richness of our common ground is, but also the richness of our uniqueness and our individuality. That's where I just revel as a writer in is exploring that space. At what do we think, that Venn diagram? Now I'm doing fourth grade education a lot now, right? So the Venn diagram, that overlapping space between the stranger and the kin, and then the places where we meet, right? That you can't see that really on the Broad stage at home, but you know what a Venn diagram is. And that too is the rich space that right. If your hands are larger than mine, maybe you can show that interweaving space.
I do that. I can't.
That's the rich space where literature lives, I think, is that you as a reader and I as a writer, we come together someplace where the world meets, and that's what that gets to be brought forward in great literature and great poetry. And I love to be part of that, both as a reader and appreciator of poetry, and also as a practitioner.
And just, can you talk a little bit about the Bible? you've been interested in the Bible, kind of like language, rhetoric, poetry. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe because it's an apocalyptic time and the many plagues that are upon us. It's very Old Testament. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because you've studied it a bit.
I have spent my entire life thinking about and studying the Bible in a variety of different ways. My grandfather was a minister. I was raised in the church, and the Bible is in many ways the canonical text of so much of Western culture. And so I believe in understanding the Bible simply for that fact of understanding where so much of our ethical and moral stance developed and has diverted from also. But also it's just good music, right? Like in many ways, like the sounds of the language in that text, both in its original languages and in its translations, are just beautiful when said out loud. And I'm interested in the ways that beautiful language can move us, and meaningful language can move us. And again, here I am with another Venn diagram, what the intersection is between beauty and meaning and purpose, and how those can be used for really positive shifts and changes and foundations for our culture, but also really dangerous and devastating ones as well. And where I can center myself when I'm using language that I want to make beautiful and that I want to make sound good and I want to make enticing, but I also really want to make the world better. And how I can do that. And I think maybe the Bible is one of those instructive texts. There's many instructive texts, but the Bible is one of them. I'm thinking about another super instructive text since the Broad Stage is out of Pasadena. Any of you watchers and listeners who have not yet found Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, that is another kind of canonical text to me for understanding how to live through very difficult times. That it's just one of the most beautiful and instructive pieces of it's to me a canonical piece of literature that also is just a darn good read, right? And so that's where we can go to literature, right? Sometimes it's just entertainment, it's just straight up entertainment, but it can also be instructive, and it can also really be a space of ethical, moral, practical instruction. And we can find that in literature over and over and over again.
So, yeah. So, any final? We have one more piece to go to. It will be by Kim Stafford. But any final thoughts before we turn to his piece called "I Am the Seed" in this evening, or thinking going forward? I'm also wondering, kind of with your daughter, if you think that she'll have a slightly different legacy growing up than you did, or it will be the same?
Oh, well, absolutely. There's no way that the children coming out of this experience, which science is suggesting to us is not it's not going to be quickly passing, right? We're going to be dealing with the acute consequences of the situation for somewhere between 6 to 12 more months, and the ongoing consequences of this for anywhere from 3 to 15 years, right? I mean, the levels of ways in which this is going to change the entire structure of this planet means that my child's life is going to be different. And that is heartbreaking for me, in a sense, in the way, if you want to be a parent who has a child's life look just like you. And perhaps my cant towards the historical, my way of thinking about the past as an instructive space, it helps me to understand that no child is going to have the same experience of her parent, and that what I can give her are the tools for survival that will help her figure out how to make sense of the now she has now.
Thank you so much. Very, very inspiring. So beautiful. and thought-provoking. So thanks to Camille T. Dungy, our featured poet for this evening. We're going to pivot to Kim Stafford for a moment before we bring back Rob and Kate to say goodnight. And shout out to Eileen Lipkin, who's here tonight. Lisa Cohn, Language That Sings Beautiful. Harlan Rotblatt says, Harlan Rotblatt, one of our favorites, loves the whole idea of relative strangers and where the world meets. A beautiful articulation of how this hour over these last few weeks has helped Harlan feel connected out of this isolation. Thanks to all. And thanks to Diana Vagiano's Almond Trout. So now to Kim Stafford, I Am the Seed.
Every chance I get, any place I fit, in a cleft of grit, in ravine or pit, by ancient wit, my husk I split. I am the seed. I fell to the ground without a sound, by rainfall drowned, by sunlight found, by wonder crowned, through luck profound. I am the seed. After fiery thief, after bout of grief, though life is brief, I sprout relief with tiny leaf beyond belief. I am the seed. I am the seed, small as a bead. Tell me your need, your hunger I'll feed. Any trouble you're in, I will begin, for I am the seed. Up I rise to seek the prize from all that dies by bold surprise. Small and wise, before your eyes, I am the seed.
Beautiful. I want to bring back Rob Bayless and Kate Gale to say good night to you all. And hello, Rebecca Regalata Hogan said it's very soothing. I want to thank our poets tonight, Camille T. Dungy, Adrianne Kalfopoulou, Tess Taylor, Joe Jiménez, Elizabeth Bradford, and Kim Stafford. So, you two, saying good night. Kate and Rob?
Well, that was just such a wonderful evening. And before we sign off, I just want to say that I'm really looking forward to your new book, The Mad Woman and the Roomba. I know everyone else is too.
June
we
2nd,
should all be pre-ordering that.
Yeah.
Yes, I know it's coming out very
June 2nd, yes.
soon from Norton.
And it has been a pleasure, doing all these books of people on books coming out in this time. And it's been so great to celebrate all the books that people have had in the last 6 weeks and going forward. So.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Kate?
She froze for a moment, but she'll be back.
She'll be back.
To you, Rob. This has been so fun and so great. And the Broad Stage is such a cultural gem in Los Angeles. And it's been just such a heartbeat of Los Angeles. And you're still here and will continue to thrive, right?
We are still here. We are still continuing to thrive. And Sandra, I can't thank you enough for let me speak in a moment in binge watching terms, shall I? Since we're all familiar with binge watching terms right now. Let's imagine these first 6 episodes of Red Hen Poetry Hour from the Broad Stage at Home as season 1. And as you may have noted when we wrote to you about this one, we're going to be taking a short hiatus to learn from all of our experience and regroup and come back to you with season 2. So we've left you with a little bit of a cliffhanger, but we think you'll be back. So we expect to be coming back to you a little bit closer to the summer. I wanted to reflect really quickly first on that first episode we did with Dana Gioia, and I'll give you all a little behind the scenes look, which was a comment I think that Dana made when we were all in private. I don't know that he actually made it on the live stream, but we were talking about doing this for the first time and putting it together and all the things that were unknowns, and it's a poetry hour, and Dana said, well, of course we should be doing this with absolute dead certainty. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, we've never been here before, but poetry has. And I thought that was such a perfect statement for why we should all be here and why this is so critical, that to connect to that longitudinal arc, to that depth of human experience, and to be able to draw on it with this elegance and this tumult and this power at a moment when all of us are looking for a beacon in the fog is just an extraordinary gift. And I thought that insight from him was, oh, Kate's back, was profoundly meaningful. So I wanted to reflect on that. And I also wanted to just capture 2 things that I thought also were telling about both where we are and where we'll be when we come back. I loved this comment from Kim Stafford about now we live in an acceleration of the possible. And I think that that's also part of this, that as much as we're in this slowdown, as much as we're in this gripping place, we're also in a funny way revving. We're revving and we're getting ready to really come forward boldly with the future. And I think we're going to come forward with that future in hand. I absolutely do. And that sense of really harnessing that energy and coming forward with it was a welcome thought. And I also felt that Camille captured that in the comment she made about how to make sense of the now we have, that we don't have tools for this yet. So it's incredibly wonderful to be able to spend the time together to build that toolkit, and who better to do it with than poets. So I'm thrilled that we've been able to do this first season. I'm ready for season 2. It's coming a few weeks down the line. And Sandra, I can't thank you enough. I just can't, for being such a gracious and brilliant host. Kate.
But my pleasure. We've been on such a journey since it's like every week has totally changed. So I look forward to season 2 too. Kate, you have the last word since you dropped out for a moment. You have the last word, Kate.
Well, Sandra, you have been amazing. You are truly fantastic hostess, and we could not have done all this without you. We have just been kind of throwing the tools together, but you are really making the cake. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right. So we're going to sign off, and we'll see you. No cliffhanger, no dead bodies, but it is a cliffhanger to season 2. Thanks to you all, and we'll see you in season 2.
Yes.
Can't wait. Take care.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.